Should we get one for our own agency and our own community? And how would we do that? And what would that mean? And so we wanted to reach out to one of our great partners and a friend of mine ever since I moved to Seattle, somebody I've known for the 10 years that I've been here. And I know Kim has been with the Medic One Foundation for over 20 years now and took over as the executive director of the Medic One Foundation 4 or 5 years ago now and really has driven it to an even higher level. So Kim Martin is joining us from the Medic One Foundation. Kim is a fantastic partner in resuscitation and education and everything involving EMS, and we wanted to invite her to join us today and share a little bit about the foundation and teach us all what kind of role this can play in an EMS system. So take it away, Kim.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Andy. I really appreciate it. So as Andy said, I'm Kim Duncan Martin. I'm the Executive Director for Medic One Foundation. I've been here. I'm actually going to celebrate my 25th anniversary in July. So I've been here for quite a few years. And it's an amazing place to work. I went from hospice to saving lives. So really two different things in fundraising. So thank you again for having me. So most people know what Medic One is, but as you said, a lot of people don't know about the Medic One Foundation and realize that there is this foundation behind the system. And we've been working quietly for the last 50 years to sustain and to strengthen the program. We're kind of like the best known secret, unknown secret in the EMS. There's no other foundation like us in the country, and we're dedicated solely to raising funds for paramedic training, research, and community programs. And at the core of our mission is the legacy of Dr. Leonard Cobb and Dr. Michael Kopis, who believed emergency care should begin in the moment somebody calls 911. Our mission is pretty simple: to save lives, to improve pre-hospital emergency care. And our goal is really that nobody dies from a treatable medical emergency. So today I will share with you what we fund, how we fund it, and how you might apply some of that lessons to your own communities. So one of the most common questions that we get is, why should we donate to Medic One? Don't my taxpayer dollars pay for it? And the answer is yes. Your taxpayers' dollars do cover the core services, the medic units, the salary, and the fuel. But what Medic One Foundation does is it takes those services to another level. We fund the advanced paramedic training, innovative research, and the high fidelity equipment and simulation training that goes along with that. So it's a great public-private partnership that we've built over the last 50 years. So Medic One success is well known, as I said, but few realize that it began with a 3-year federal grant back in 1969. 2 years into the program, the federal grant ran out, and the Seattle mayor at the time was not really a fan of Medic One going forward. And despite its success, the program was really on the brink of being shut down. So Dr. Cobb and at the time Chief Gordon Vickery turned to the community with a goal of raising $100,000 to save the program. And the community rallied. The newspapers ran stories and ads, kids ran penny drives, civic groups host bake sales, and even the barbers came out and did a day's proceeds towards it. So the community didn't just raise $100,000 that year, they exceeded it. So rather than letting the extra money go back into the general fund, Dr. Cobb and some local leaders founded the Medic One Foundation to ensure this life-saving system would always be there to support the growth and thrive for the community. So the first 25 years, the Medic One Foundation was run entirely by volunteers, literally out of Dr. Cobb's office. It was a passion project funded almost completely by bequest wills that we received and with a belief in the mission. It wasn't until 1999, when they started to see the plan giving slowing, that they actually decided to hire their first staff and start actively fundraising so that they could take it to the next level. That decision set us up on a pathway to where we are today. And what began as a crisis has turned into a sustainable, high-impact EMS support system. So by the numbers, In the last 50 years, we have invested over 37 million in life-saving care. Now, compared to the fire department's budgets, that's really a small amount, but the impact is substantial. We've invested over 17 million to fully fund not only the tuition for the paramedics. There's been 700 since we started that we've gone through the Medic One paramedic training program over at Harborview, to ongoing continuing education for the 240 active paramedics in King County. We just recently did a facilities upgrade, took the paramedic training program from a 900 square foot room to 3,700, and made sure that they had the technology and equipment they needed to meet capacity as they grew. We also, in the early days, invested a lot of money into our EMS and research and development. We've put in over $6 million since the beginning into helping validate telephone assisted CPR, to early defibrillation by firefighter in response, to new technologies in cardiac arrest and trauma care. And we've also played a big role in the Resuscitation Academy in the early years in helping provide the funding to get them started so that they could become their own agency. And we continue to work closely with them now as we go forward on other projects. Since 2000, we've also helped provided over 260 EMS equipment grants to fire and EMS providers throughout Washington states, everything from a defibrillator to trauma mannequins, helping equip the responders across our region, and especially in communities with limited resources. Over the past 10 years, we've put about $1 million in our community programs. That included, in 2016, we helped kick off the Pulse Point in Seattle, and then eventually throughout King and Snohomish County, one item that we continue to support. In 2021, we began to offer our CPR and AED and first aid training classes, now delivering over 200 classes annually, training approximately 3,000 adults and 800 youth each year. And we're also working with a lot of that outreach with the youth groups like Nick of Time Foundation to bring CPR training and awareness to students as young as kindergarten. And our latest one in 2024 is we just launched our community AED program. So we've so far donated 25 AEDs to nonprofits and youth groups across our region, all the way to Roslyn in Eastern Washington, and especially looking at prioritizing high risk and underserved areas. And then after the pandemic, we saw the pressure on our EMS workers and knew we had to act. So we prioritized mental health and workforce resilience by funding peer support clinic, as well as clinical counseling for our paramedic students. And we also supported innovative models like the Puget Sound Fire's social worker program, where they wanted to put social workers out on their vehicles with a registered nurse to help relieve some of the calls of repeat callers and improve long-term outcomes. And each year we continue to sponsor the fire and EMS, the local fire and EMS leadership summit, focusing on leadership development, retention, and preparing the next generation of EMS workers. And through our EMT scholarship program at North Seattle College, we cover the tuition and gear for students who might not otherwise have the path to pursue this career. We prioritize applications from underserved and underserviced areas because we believe that EMS should reflect the diversity of the people it serves. And over the last 5 years, we have provided 60 scholarships, and we've seen out of that 95% pass rate and 70% plus of the scholarship recipients going on to pursue further fire service careers. And we've invested $9 million in special projects, from launching the UW EMS Coalition, where it's Washington's first college EMS agency, and funding rescue drones and seeding programs like the Nick of Time Foundation and Medic 2. These initiatives don't quite fit in any of our other granting areas, but fill the gap that we need in EMS. We've covered what we've funded, but now what happens is how it happens is the next step. Where does the funding come from? So here at the foundation, nearly 80% of our funding comes from individuals and people who believe in our mission and that want to ensure that continues to grow. Only 14% comes from planned gifts now. Those are bequests. It's a big shift from where we really started. In the beginning, 85% did come from this area, and we've been able to diversify our support over the last 25 years so that we're not reliant on those gifts anymore. And then how we raise our support. This chart kind of shows what vehicles we use to bring in our money. And if we start at the bottom, you'll see that personal visits is about 35%. And that's the most important. That's where you're reaching out one-on-one with individuals with major gifts, IRAs, bequests. We do have a gala every year that we throw. It's a very great gala. It raises lots of money, helps us build our friendships because that's really important as well. And then direct mail, we relied on that for many years, but as we see the generation change and millennials and Gen Zs coming up, we know that we need to look at different ways to give. And so we've seen our online giving, which is 6%, doesn't seem like much, but we've seen it grow substantially over the last few years. And that's one area that we'll continue to work on. Why our model works. So how do we keep support going year after year? Diverse funding mix. As I said, events, grants, major gifts, mails, and online donors are really important to do. And another really important one is mission-driven messaging. Making sure that you're telling your story and using your survivors to help tell those stories as well. It's ensuring that the right help shows up when it's needed the most. Those kind of stories are really powerful when you go out to donors. And then finally, stewardship. You have to thank your donors. That's really what we strive to do, is making sure that we're not only thanking our donors, but we're reporting back to them on what we're doing and engaging them by inviting them to many of our events. So over the last 25 years, we raised 140,000 way back in 1974. Today, we raised 5.1 million last year alone, using 5,000 active donors, and we're able to give out $3 million in program services. That's the most we've ever raised, and we will continue to try to strive to do more. And with a $10 million reserve, we're able to meet urgent needs and plan for long-term impact going down the road. And we don't receive it. One thing nice is we don't receive any government funding. We're not relied on that. So we have the ability to give out money and not have to worry about wondering if we're going to have government cuts coming down the line. So what's next for us? So we just completed a 5-year strategic plan, a roadmap that builds on everything we've done, but also looks ahead at what we need to do. Our vision is advancing EMS quality across Washington. So as we look to the future, not every community in Washington has access to the same level of EMS, whether it's training, equipment, response time. There's a real disparity across our state. So our board is really committed to building a future where every patient in every corner of the state has access to the highest standard of emergency care. So on that path, our strategic plan came up with 3 goals that we have identified over the next 5 years. First, we'll continue to strengthen our flagship paramedic training program, investing in world-class education, expanding capacity to meet regional demand. We have gone from training 24 students a year to 32 students a year, and hope to be able to reach 40 students eventually. We're sharing our training innovations nationally. We've asked that the paramedic training program start to share what they're doing and their accomplishments with others throughout the nation and the state to maybe help take their level of training to a higher level. We want to expand our EMS support statewide. So every community in Washington, no matter where you live, has access to the high quality emergency care. And I'll share a little bit more about this on the next slide. And third, we're building a new era of awareness and support. Most of our donors are over 65 years old, with the majority of them over 80. So one of the things we've identified is we must begin to engage the next generation of supporters, and through platforms of messaging and resonate with them, because our donors have carried us a long ways, but we do need to make sure that we're constantly building up new donors to take their place over time. So expanding a little bit more in that second area, one of the most ambitious and essential goals of ours is we know that one size won't fit all on this. We're not going to be able to take a community and put them at a level of what King County is. But like the Resuscitation Academy, maybe we can give you the tools to help you fundraise and to get to that level. So one of the things we're doing is starting with seed funding to help communities kickstart local fundraising, especially where the need is high, but the infrastructure is really lacking. The second part that we're going to be doing is supporting ALS training access, including paramedic education, whether it be coming to the Medic One paramedic training program, Central, Tacoma, but finding ways that we can help ensure that advanced life-saving, the ALS training can be supply to everybody across the state. Also providing simulation tools and continuing education that can also help. And then we'll provide customized tools and technical assistance, from forming a nonprofit to maybe doing a fiscal sponsorship or to launching any kind of development fundraising materials that you might need to help out and getting your support to take your EMS to another level. So our next step over the next year is we're planning our plan of action is working with EMS leaders to identify ready communities and begin building statewide impact. We'll expand our equipment grant program, explore ways to make ALS training more accessible, and support fundraising through guidance, fiscal sponsor, and toolkits. Above all, we're committed to listening and learning from EMS leaders across Washington. So we are in the process right now. We are looking for individuals who might be interested in learning more to reach out to us. So if you are in Washington State, I do suggest that you give me a call or shoot me an email. I'd love to talk to you about this more. So that is our goals for the next 5 years. Now I want to take a look at what this would look like in your community. So let's say you want to go out and you want to start either a foundation, or you want to fundraise, or you've got a small project that you need to do in your community, or maybe you attended the Resuscitation Academy, you saw everything they did, everything they taught, and they said, hey, we want to be able to do that at our community, but we don't have the money to support it. So this is where this part comes in really handy. And we've had a few communities come to us in the past and that we worked with to give them guidance and to be able to purchase not only training equipment, but find ways to fundraise and either increase their staffing or buy the equipment they need or training that they need. And so I'll walk you through this, and I'm open to anybody calling me anytime if you have any questions. So the key to start to launch your local support, whether you're starting a foundation, affiliation with one, or championing EMS funding, you'll need the following to set the following items. First, you'll need a real clear vision. Define what your community needs: ALS expansion, training, tools, more medics, or CPR outreach. Be specific about it. And when you come to it, make your list and know that those are the items that you really need. You need to have a strong mission. Your mission should guide your efforts and reflect local needs, something people can really rally around. So if it's wanting to increase your survival rates, make that a point in there and lay it out. And then one of the most important part is you have to have support from your local leadership. So support from your chiefs, your union leaders, the elected officials, lending credibility to show donors that this is a true community priority. That is critical, because if you don't have that, you won't be successful. Next, once you have your vision, your mission, and your leadership in place, Now you're going to have to choose a path that you want to go down. Some communities may form a nonprofit. Others may want to partner with an existing 501c3, like a hospital foundation, a community foundation, or a union-based nonprofit. And if you're not ready to go solo, another option that you could do is fiscal sponsorship. And it's a great starting point to just see if it's something you want to do. And it allows you to have the back office support that the 501c3 nonprofit you are partnering with can provide. So that is definitely one area I always tell people is a great opportunity. And many community foundations offer fiscal sponsorships. So just look in your community to see if your community foundation offers that. Then you need to really form a planning group. Gather a small team that understands EMS in your region. It doesn't have to be formal, just enough to build momentum, credibility, and help define your priorities. So this could be just community leaders. This could be retirees of your organization. It could be hospital staff, physicians, EMS leaders, medical directors, pulling everybody together to help put this together. You need to start simple. So the next part here, if you decide to create your own nonprofit, there are a lot of steps that you can do. And there is a lot of stuff online now that can walk you through this. So you'll need to file an articles of corporation, adopt bylaws, apply for your 501c status, and establish financial oversight. If that feels overwhelming, like I said, there are templates on how to do that online. Your infrastructure, you need to determine how you're going to process these gifts, how you're going to track them, how you're going to thank your donors. Do I need to set up a website? Operational and basic governance. You need to know how you're going to process, what's your rules around taking in gifts. And then, you're going to need to determine if you need volunteers or a staff. That's very important parts of this. Next, you're going to need to build your case for support. You're going to need to tell your story. With the infrastructure in place, you've got to come up with a compelling case for support. So again, keep your mission short, clear, and outcome focused. What will change because of your existence or of this? What will change because of this? The need, show the gap, what is missing? What do you need in order to fulfill your goals? Whether it's a shortage of ALS trained medics, outdated equipment, or you want to improve your response times or your survival rates. Explain it to the public and why the funding is needed. And then be specific about what the funding is going to be used for. It helps donors visualize their impact, training equipment, or life-saving tools. Your story isn't just about what you do, it's also about the lives that are saved because of it. So just, really remember that storytelling is a really big part of that, and having maybe survival stories is what we use a lot, that really kind of touch the heart of the individual that you're going to. Then you need to identify your early champions. Those might most likely would be people who believe in your mission, might have been served before. So start close to home, survivors, family members. What I call family members is EMS individuals, people who have been close to the EMS family. They might be firefighters, EMTs, they might be commissioners, depending on where you are, physicians that work in the EMS. And then, stakeholders, community leaders are another big one to tap. Reach out to your local Rotary clubs, your business leaders, civic groups, and the hospital foundation to see if you can get any other. And then, of course, vendors. We all have vendors. Reach out to them to see if they would be happy to sponsor whatever project you're working on. And then ask your leaders and your friends to help identify supporters. So you've tapped this group of individuals to help you lay this out. Have them start to reach out to their friends, their clients, their people they know in the community, and focus on why they'd give, not how much they'll give. So it's really important on that part. So the next area, now it's time to raise your money. So you want to start with what fits your community. So not everything we do here at the Medic One Foundation will fit with what you need to do. So, one way a lot of organizations starts off is just finding 5 people in the community that have the capacity to support you and going out there and making the ask to them. And it doesn't have to be a lot. It might be, if they're financially, they don't want to support you, ask them to support you in identifying individuals that might be interested in supporting you. You know, Events, they don't have to be a big gala your first time. You can do a pancake breakfast, you can do an open house, you can do have one of your big supporters throw a event at their house, a CPR party, those kind of things, very small, but they bring people together and they start to build that awareness, because that's going to be a very important part of it. And then tap local foundations and service clubs, especially for equipment and training grants. Just a few of them that are out there that you might want to go to is Firehouse Subs. They offer grants every year to fire departments, EMS, and first responders, Motorola as well. And contact your local banks and your credit unions. All of them have, at a local level, can give up to $500, most of them. And so, they have discretionary funds. So reach out to some of those local contacts and see who you can raise from. And then, you can always go into doing an online or seasonal appeal through direct mail, email, or social media. You all might have social media platforms. Use that to help build not only awareness, but funds. Also, set up a little web page. You can do that outside of your organization as well. And then partner with, the unions, the hospital, and local businesses to add the support. Maybe one of the restaurants in town will do a night and all the proceeds go to your organization. So those are some of the easy ways. Another one is golf. Everybody loves to golf. So, putting on a golf tournament is another great one. You can sell sponsorships around holes. Some of their insurances locally and those kind of places love to do that as well. So keep all of that in mind as you're looking for ways to raise money. And like I said, again, it's, partnering with another nonprofit or with a community foundation. You can do a lot of these items while you're under their umbrella. So just remember that as you're going forward. And then the most important part of it is stewardship. You've got to thank your donors. You've got to keep them engaged, because once you've captured them through these events and through these different kind of avenues, you've got to really continue to communicate with them. It's very important. There's so much competition out there in the world right now for these donors. So keeping them engaged is really important. Send handwritten thank yous and notes, in a timely manner. Offer them to come in and see your fire station, or take a ride along, or meet and greet with some of your executives. And, recognize them online or in your newsletters. A lot of the corporations and small businesses now are looking for cause-related marketing, and they want to be recognized. And so many of your fire departments have 10,000 plus followers, and they're very, they would love to be called out in front of those individuals. So, that's a really good way to recognize donors. And then, if you have a graduation academy or anything like that, invite them to come and see firsthand what their money's paying for. Or if you've purchased a bunch of equipment, one of the things we like to do is we invite our donors to come into our drills. And when we hold a drill, we invite them to come and watch all that equipment being used by the paramedic students. We invite them to the paramedic graduation. We hold an open house once a year. And then we do some one-on-ones with them too. We will invite them to meet the paramedics that they help train that year. So it's, there's a lot of ways you can utilize what you have in your industry to steward these donors. So, stewardship equals retention equals long-term success. And so one of the things, we have is many of our donors who come in, almost half of them have been served. They've self-identified that they have been served. And so by bringing them in and stewarding them, we watch a lot of our donors who come through a basic, what we call acquisition mailing. It's cold call kind of mailing that goes out. We've seen them turn into bequests. later on, 20 years later, we get a bequest from these individuals. So, what you do up front, stewardship wise, pays off in the end. So always remember that as well. And then what are some of the common mishaps to really watch for? Don't wait to build a relationship. Like I said, start talking to them now, really get in there even before you launch any kind of a program, start building those relationships with everybody. Don't overlook the stewardships. Make sure you're calling them, sending them notes, inviting them to really important events. And don't rely solely on a one-time event, because you can throw the event and then you just forget about it and the donors go on to somewhere else. And don't underestimate the power of stories. Personal stories of survival, of community impact, raises more money than just your stats. I know we're very data driven, but the personal stories is what really hits hard to the home, to the heart. So make sure that, and you'll never know who you'll identify when you're telling a story that has had a similar um, outcome. So, and don't assume that the public understands EMS. A lot of people don't. Nobody knows what BLS means. Nobody knows what ALS means. So when you're out talking to them, you got to make sure that you identify those and what they mean, and really talk at a common sense level for them. And educate them. A lot of people have levies or taxes that go along, or maybe you charge for services, but educate them on what that goes towards and what their donation will go towards. So lastly, I just want to really quickly share a case study. I know Thurston County has been highlighted before by the Resuscitation Academy as well, but Thurston County Medic 1, which is in Washington State in Southwest Washington. So they have Medic 1 there, as well as EMS and fire. And at one point, many years ago, they had their own 501c3, but they let it lapse. And so they came to the Medic 1 Foundation, and they let us know they had this opportunity. They wanted to throw a 50th anniversary gala, and they also wanted to purchase some EMS equipment for their program. And so they saw online that we once did fiscal sponsorships. So they asked if they would be willing to help them with a fiscal sponsorship to put on this 50th anniversary, as well as purchase the equipment. So we invited them to apply. They applied for a fiscal sponsorship through the foundation, and the board approved it. They turned around then, and one thing we asked is that you form a planning committee, an advisory committee. And so they did, of retirees, close stakeholders in the community, and their staff. And those individuals went out and they engaged the vendors, and they engaged the community for support and partnerships, and they raised sponsorships as well as sold tickets to the event. And they used their event to really spotlight that they've been in service for 50 years. So this model allowed them to launch quickly, raise money locally, and build momentum, all without the upfront burden of having to create a nonprofit from scratch. So what we did for them is we set up a web page for them where they could have their money come in. We processed all of their donations as they came in. We provided them with all the templates they needed to thank their donors. And we just kind of guided them, and we processed all their expenses too that went along with this. And so their fund was set up here at the Medic 1 Foundation, a restricted fund for them. And all their income came through that fund, and all their expenses came out of that fund.
Awesome. Do you, as part of the fiscal sponsorship, and I'm asking this as
Yeah.
a simple doctor who doesn't live in this world in any way, right? So part of a fiscal sponsorship, I assume, is like a little bit of seed funding, or at least some sort of upfront funding to get the event off the ground, and secure deposits for a space and catering and all those kinds of logistical support that you need early on, or how does that kind of stuff work?
No, actually, with the fiscal support, they have to go out and raise the money first. And so
Oh,
then, yeah, so they'll go out, and first thing they did was go out and get sponsorships. So
got it.
they went out and they solicited $500 sponsorships from about 10 donors,
Awesome.
mostly vendors and local corporations. And so then they had that money up front. So then they were able to to pay the deposit, put everything down, and be able to put on the event. But yeah, so with the fiscal sponsor, we do ask that, you have to raise the money first before using it.
You got to have a little bit ahead of time to show that
Yeah.
you can do it,
Yep.
you're reducing the paperwork burden for sure, right? They don't have to become their own nonprofit. They don't have
Yeah,
to
no, we
create a
take
funding. Yeah,
responsibility. Yeah, we would take responsibility of providing those individuals with their year-end tax forms as well. So
awesome,
we're the host. We're kind of the host for their donations, as well as making sure that all the legal side of it is taken care of for them as well.
awesome, super
And it
cool.
gives them credibility because they got name brand with it as well. So our naming was put onto a lot of their collateral that they sent out as well. So individuals knew that they were being supported by a larger nonprofit organization.
Awesome.
And so, yeah, so it turned out that they raised $15,000,
Wow.
which fully funded their gala event. And then it left about $5,000 for them to use towards their EMS training equipment. So,
Awesome.
really, yeah, it shows that aligning with us, they were able to really broaden their community support, not only honoring the past, but also the future. So, it kind of kickstarted them. This event
Mhm.
really kickstarted them. So they're continuing on with us now for a second year of fiscal sponsorship, where they're going to go out and they're going to build off of the donor base that they've built with everybody who attended. They have about 250 people attend the event. So they're going to build off of that and start really going out and doing more fundraising and try to get their equipment purchases that they need for the future as well. So at that point, I am really open to any questions anybody might have as well. And yeah.
Awesome. I have a whole bunch of questions.
Okay.
If anybody else has questions, feel free to put them in the chat, put them in the Q&A, and I'll help get them worked in and asked, and we'll go from there. So, Kim, that's fantastic, and what a wonderful like roadmap, like how to get off the ground and think about doing it, and some real awesome options for partnership. Just a super cool story. I have like six different areas of questions, but I won't bother you with all of them right now, but we'll get to a few of them. My first one is sort of the storytelling aspects, right? Which I think is super cool. And I think you guys do a really good job of it, right? And I've seen survivor stories for sure, but I see a bunch of other kinds of stories. And I was hoping maybe you could talk about some of those other types of stories that you tell, whether they're about paramedic students or about agencies, sort of all the other different types of stories that you guys tell, and how that's maybe changed a little bit over time and evolved to where it is now.
Yeah, yeah, no. Yeah, so we really focus a lot on, telling stories about survivors. That's our biggest one. But we also, each year we highlight the students that are in our paramedic training program. So we'll do profiles on all of the students as we go through the year. We also ask them to write letters to our donors, and we publish those letters. Just recently we had one that he came from Texas, I believe, and is going to be going to work for King County Medic One in the south part of the county. And just kind of they write a letter. They tell their story. They tell them why, why did they want to come to work for Medic One? What they've learned in the training program. What has been their biggest obstacle? What has been their, the most challenging and the most rewarding? They always like to talk to about, a maybe a story, maybe a call they went on that was really important. A really cool one was last year we had a individual that was in the class that we interviewed, and she had said that she's been carrying around a card from one of our donors or from somebody who had been served for the last year, reminding her why she's in the class, because the class is, it's a lot of hours, it's intense. And so every time she would get worried she wasn't going to make it through, she'd pull that card and look at it. Well, when we were reading that story, we just happened to read the same story from the donor and realized it was the same people. And
Wow.
so at graduation, we connected them together, and it was powerful.
Yeah.
It was very powerful. So, telling the stories of the paramedics and the students that are going through, also sharing the stories of, organizations that we fund items for. So AEDs that we're giving out now, where we share those stories of why they needed it and what the impact is going to make. We share stories about our EMT scholarship recipients that come through as well, and where they're going. We follow them from the time they come through class until they maybe reach becoming a firefighter EMT. And so we stay in touch with them and share those stories. So yeah, and we share stories about the research projects we do. If the outcome, a lot of times the outcome isn't what you want it to be, but it tested it. And that's important that we share that. But yeah, so we find different avenues to share these stories, and we've found that social media has been wonderful to be able to really do that.
Yeah. You talked a little bit about, and I was kind of struck by your biggest donor item being these in-person visits, right? I mean, like how important that is to not only tell the story, but tell that story face to face and tell
Yeah.
that story in a way that really connects with people. And can you talk a little bit about some of the secret sauce of these visits and like what kinds of visits there are and what they look like and
Yeah.
what really drives success in one of these visits and
Yeah.
leads to lots of connection?
Yeah. Our biggest, it's kind of like, um, the Humane Society has the pets. They have the animals, which really just, well, we have the paramedic students and the paramedics. So when we walk into a room with a donor who maybe has been giving $150, $200 a year, and they've been served, and all of a sudden you've brought in a paramedic into this room, it changes the whole outcome for them. It gives them the ability to meet somebody that might have played a role in what happened to them, or can tell them more. They listen to them and hear the stories, and it touches their hearts. And so really telling those stories in a one-on-one is a lot easier than it really captures their attention, and them being able to come in and see the students working or attending. We had one donor who attended a drill, and it inspired them to want to give more because they saw, all of these different scenarios that where these people are making a difference, and they were able to really connect. Like, I've been in a car wreck, I've seen a car wreck, and now I've seen what really it entails, and they're impressed. And so, using your toolbox, as I say, when you go out to visit a donor is really important. If that's bringing a chief with you, or it's bringing a paramedic with you, or if it's showing them some equipment, if you're in a hospital, touring an area that's really important, that you're funding. It's important to them, and they want to see that tangible items that they can really grasp onto is really a big item. And so we try to do that as much as possible.
You talked a little bit about some of the funding changes and what I think of as sort of the future risks, right? Which are the population of donors is
Mhm.
aging, which is a ch true risk and a challenge. And then this change in mix, right? Direct mail has become less effective, but online has grown exponentially.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of this is sort of hinting at how do you connect with the next generation of donors? And I was kind of curious to hear your thoughts on that. You hinted at it a little bit, and I'm sure there's much more going on in the background to think about that challenge and what you can do. And so I'm kind of curious to get
Yeah.
some insight from you.
It is a huge challenge because the biggest thing we hear from the younger population is, "I don't need Medic One." They don't see the red trucks the way that people who are older see the red trucks. One of the things I didn't touch on was a big fundraiser for us is retirement communities.
Mm.
So we have built some really great relationships with retirement communities, and each one of those, if you go out to your retirement communities, usually has a residence council that can give away money every year. So make sure that you're connecting with them. But for the younger generation, they are into TikTok, they're into everything online. So we are trying to find ways that we can really connect with them in that, and showing more videos. We have found that the more videos we show, the more followers we gather, the more I think we had 250 impressions the other day on a video, 250,000, sorry, impressions on a video the other
Wow.
day. But
Wow.
it's amazing. They really like to be the interactive stuff online. So it's finding ways. There's a couple things I can't talk about on here yet that we're looking at doing because there's an NDA on it, but we have some ideas about how you can, really trying to go out there. One of the things we are doing though is CPR. So that's one
Mhm.
thing that we built up was, what can we do to touch that younger group? And CPR was one of them. So we're using our CPR to go out and to build this relationship with the younger generation. And then we also have a training unit that we go out to, and we call it, it's like the touch the truck. So we go out to a lot of the schools and stuff with that and try to get them, used to the medic units and what it is and let them see all the toys on it. But with the millennials, they really like to be able to put their hands on it. And so it's really you can't really take them out with you on a call. You can't really do that. So it's finding that other way you can interact with them. And I think most of it's going to be through video for us and really, call to action when there's a crisis. They like that as well. But we're not giving up because we know that everybody's going to age up eventually. So we're just making sure that we're filling those gaps as we're going. So, we're working on the 50s right now. I know I'm a real candidate right now to be a patient. So I'm really invested in it. And so, we're really making sure that individuals know, how important the, the services are. And so, working with each one of those groups, but direct mail is going to go away eventually. And so
Yeah,
really trying to make sure that you're emailing, you're keeping in touch with people, and you're engaging them online. So when our biggest thing is, as long as we're keeping actively in front of them, when that time comes that they might get served or a friend, they'll remember who we are.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a great way to head towards the end here. Just a really tremendous session, Kim, and we'll have to have you back when the non-disclosure agreement expires, and we can talk more about connecting with this next generation with some experience, because that I think is a really interesting topic that is pretty fascinating on many fronts, right? On a donor pool
Yep.
foundation front, but also on just an EMS and a training front. Like, how do we connect with the next generation of donors, of firefighters, EMTs, doctors, everything, right? And really is a challenge. So tremendous session, awesome hour, Kim. Really, really, really appreciate you being here. For all of those that are looking for more information, medic1foundation.org is the website for the Medic One Foundation. All of Kim's contact info is on there. We can also connect you if anybody needs a connection. We're happy to play that role and happy to help out. And Kim, like I said, tremendous. Thank you so much for joining us. We really, really appreciate all of the partnership, currently all the partnership over the years, and you're joining us and telling the story today, so that hopefully we can help others build success in their own program. So really, really tremendous.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You bet. We will be back in July, the third Thursday in July. We've got an exciting session planned, so we'll see everybody in July. And man, the hits are lining up. We've just got a great group of folks coming down the pike to give these webinars. So we're really excited with the upcoming lineup, and we'll see you all in July with the next session. Thanks everybody for joining today. Again, Kim, thank you so much,
Thank
and
you.
happy Juneteenth to everybody out there.
All right. Thanks. Have a great weekend.